Warning disclaimer: this story is inspired by true events, but some names, locations, and details have been changed to protect the privacy of individuals involved. It contains mature themes such as infidelity, emotional vulnerability, and adult situations. Viewer discretion is advised. This content is intended for a mature audience and should not be taken as encouragement or justification for any personal decisions. The rain hit the windshield in angry streaks as Jessica sat alone in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. The wipers moved in rhythm, but they did little to clear the storm outside or the one inside her chest. It was nearly midnight, and she had no destination. She had driven aimlessly after storming out of her house, where yet another fight had exploded between her and her husband, Tyler. But this time, it wasn't about dishes or forgotten dates. This time, she had proof. A receipt from a hotel. A message on his phone. "Thanks for last night. I can't stop thinking about it." From a name she didn't recognize. She had never felt so small in her life. 10 years of marriage, and she hadn't even seen it coming. The betrayal cut deeper than words. It wasn't just about the cheating, it was the fact that he hadn't even cared enough to hide it well. Now she was here, parked outside a closed gas station, soaked in heartache and confusion. Her mascara was smudged down her cheeks, her breathing ragged, chest heaving with quiet sobs. The only sound in the air was the hum of the rain and the occasional car passing by in the distance. She was broken, vulnerable, alone. A soft knock on the car window made her jump. She turned quickly, startled. Standing in the rain with a hood over his head and concern in his eyes was someone she hadn't seen in years, Daniel. Her breath caught in her throat. Daniel. Her old college friend. The one who made her laugh so hard her stomach hurt. The one she used to study with late into the night while secretly wondering what it would feel like to hold his hand. The one she lost touch with after graduation when life swept them in different directions. "Jess," he said, his voice muffled through the glass. "Are you okay?" She slowly rolled the window down, unsure if she was dreaming. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I just got off work," he said. "I saw you parked here. You looked upset." Under normal circumstances, she might have brushed him off. But tonight, her heart was too tired to pretend. She didn't answer. Instead, a fresh tear rolled down her cheek, and she turned her face away, embarrassed. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you somewhere warm." She hesitated, her heart thudding in her chest. But then she nodded. Because for the first time in weeks, someone looked at her like she mattered. The diner was nearly empty, lit by flickering neon signs and the occasional clink of silverware from the kitchen. Jessica sat in the corner booth, wrapped in a blanket Daniel had fetched from the back of his car. Her fingers trembled slightly as she wrapped them around the warm mug of coffee, letting the steam hit her face like a comfort she didn't know she needed. Daniel sat across from her, quiet, giving her space. He didn't push her to talk. That silence, it wasn't awkward. It was safe. Finally, she spoke. "I can't believe it's you." Daniel smiled gently. "It's been years. You haven't changed much." Jessica gave a tired chuckle. "Well, that's a lie. I feel like I've aged a lifetime in the last 6 months." He nodded. "You don't have to tell me everything. But if you want to, I'll listen." And for reasons she didn't fully understand, she did. She told him about Tyler, the man she married young, the man she believed in, the man who slowly faded out of their marriage while she tried to keep it alive alone. She told him about the distance, the silence, the coldness in their home. And finally, the betrayal. The message. The woman. Daniel didn't interrupt. He didn't pity her. He just listened. "I feel stupid," Jessica admitted, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I should have seen it coming. I kept making excuses. I thought maybe I wasn't enough anymore." Daniel leaned in slightly. His voice was steady. "Don't ever say that. His actions are a reflection of him, not you." Those words hit harder than she expected. Her throat tightened. He then shared his story. He had been married 2 years. She cheated. He found out when a mutual friend accidentally revealed it. The pain in his eyes mirrored her own. It wasn't just sympathy, it was shared experience. Jessica looked at him differently now. This wasn't the same Daniel from college, the jokester who pulled all-nighters and flirted with waitresses. This Daniel was grounded, steady, older. There was a sadness in him, but also strength. A gentleness that felt like a balm on her aching soul. They talked for hours about life, about pain, about everything in between. The time slipped away unnoticed. "I miss this," she said quietly. Being seen. Being heard. Daniel looked at her, eyes soft. "You always deserved that, Jess." Even back then. Something stirred in her chest. A warmth. A flutter. She looked away quickly, unsure of what that meant or what she was ready for. But when he walked her to her car and gave her a simple, respectful hug, she held on for a second longer than she meant to. In that small, stolen moment, she realized something. She wasn't just vulnerable. She was starting to feel alive again. Jessica stared at her phone for what felt like an hour. Daniel had messaged her that morning. "Just wanted to make sure you got home okay. Last night, it was really nice seeing you again." Short. Simple. Safe. And yet, her heart was beating faster than it should. She wanted to reply immediately, but something held her back. Fear? Guilt? Confusion? She set the phone down and walked into the kitchen. Tyler was there, half asleep, sipping coffee like nothing had happened. No apology. No explanation. No mention of where he'd been the night before. It was like his affair didn't exist, as if he expected her to pretend along with him. "Morning," he muttered, barely glancing at her. Jessica forced a nod. But the silence between them was suffocating. She remembered the way Daniel looked at her. The way he listened. The warmth in his voice when he said, "You deserve better." And suddenly, that message didn't feel dangerous. It felt like a lifeline. She picked up her phone again and typed, "Thank you. I didn't realize how much I needed that night. It meant more than I can explain." She hit send before she could overthink it. Minutes later, a reply came, "Let me know if you ever want to talk again." No pressure. That simple offer lingered in her thoughts all day. The next time they met, it was casual. Coffee in the park. A bright Sunday morning. Birds chirping. People walking dogs and kids laughing in the distance. The world looked lighter somehow, and for the first time in weeks, so did Jessica. They sat on a bench, talking about books they used to read in college, old friends, and the ridiculous things they used to do. Their laughter came easily, naturally, like no time had passed. But beneath the surface, something unspoken simmered. Every time their eyes met, it lingered a second too long. When their hands accidentally brushed, her breath caught. And when Daniel gently tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear while laughing at one of her stories, her cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment, but from awareness. It scared her. Not because it felt wrong, but because it felt so right. She was still married. She hadn't made any decisions. She hadn't even fully confronted Tyler. But here she was, feeling things she hadn't felt in years. Desire. Comfort. Hope. And Daniel, he didn't push. He didn't flirt recklessly. But his presence was consistent, grounded, quietly powerful. Like an anchor she hadn't realized she needed. When he said goodbye that day, he simply smiled and said, "Take care of yourself, Jess." And as she watched him walk away, she found herself wondering something she knew she shouldn't. What would it feel like to let go completely? The night air was cool as Jessica stepped out of her car, nerves tingling beneath her skin. Daniel had invited her for a quiet dinner at his place. Nothing fancy, he'd said. Just food and peace. You need both. She almost didn't go. She told herself it was innocent. Two old friends reconnecting. But the truth sat heavy in her chest. Something had shifted, and she felt it every time he looked at her. His apartment was simple, warm. A soft lamp lit the corner of the living room. The aroma of roasted vegetables and garlic filled the air. Music played low in the background, an old jazz record spinning gently. It wasn't romantic in an obvious way, but it was intimate. Wow, Jessica smiled, stepping inside. You cook now? Daniel grinned. Survival skills. You'd be surprised what divorce teaches you. They laughed, ate, and talked until the food turned cold on their plates. Jessica felt more herself than she had in months. No eggshells, no tension, just presence. But as the evening wore on, the silence between them began to stretch. Not uncomfortable, but charged. When Daniel brought her a cup of tea, their hands brushed again. This time, neither of them looked away. He sat down beside her on the couch, just a bit closer than before. "Jess," he said softly. She turned to him, heart pounding. "I don't want to make things harder for you. I know you're going through a lot. But I need to say this, being around you feels like home." Her breath hitched. The words were simple, but they pierced straight through the armor she'd been wearing for so long. "I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. "I feel like I'm drowning most days. And then you show up and I can breathe again." Their eyes met and neither looked away this time. He reached out slowly, giving her space to pull away. But she didn't. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing softly beneath her eye. And then, like gravity had been waiting for the right moment, they kissed. It was gentle at first, tentative. But then something deeper took over, a hunger, a release. She hadn't been touched like this in years. Not with care. Not with meaning. But even as the warmth surged through her veins, a voice whispered in the back of her mind, "You're still married. This is a line. You're crossing it." She pulled back, breathless. I should go." Daniel looked into her eyes, his expression calm but filled with longing. "Okay, if that's what you want." She didn't answer. She just stood, heart racing, and walked to the door. But her hand paused on the handle. Her body ached for more. Her heart was torn in half. And in the dim light of Daniel's living room, she realized something terrifying. She wasn't sure if she wanted to say no. Jessica sat in her bathroom, wrapped in a towel, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were tired, puffy from tears she hadn't allowed herself to cry. Her husband, Tyler, had come home late again, no explanation, no effort. When she'd asked him where he'd been, he'd shrugged. When she'd told him she knew about the other woman, he didn't even deny it. He'd just said, "You're not perfect either, Jessica." That was it. No guilt. No regret. Just cold, biting deflection. She had stood there, waiting for something, anything, that looked like remorse. It never came. Now, hours later, her phone buzzed beside her. A message from Daniel. "I know tonight was rough. I'm here if you need to talk. No pressure." She stared at the words. Her heart raced. It would be easier to ignore it, to climb into bed and pretend her marriage still had hope. But pretending had become too heavy. She was so tired of pretending. Without another thought, she picked up her phone and replied, "Can I come over?" Daniel opened the door within seconds of her arrival. His eyes searched hers, not with lust, but with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice low. She didn't answer. She stepped inside, dropped her purse, and stood there, silent. He stepped closer, cautiously, giving her time to stop him. She didn't. This time, there was no hesitation. Their lips met like magnets, pulled by something far stronger than either of them could resist. It was deeper now, urgent, desperate, filled with a hunger that had been building for years, not days. She needed to feel. She needed to be touched like she mattered. As he carried her to the bedroom, their clothes falling piece by piece, Jessica's mind went blank. No guilt, no fear, just the overwhelming sensation of being wanted, cherished, seen. The world outside that room disappeared. For a few fleeting hours, there was only her and Daniel, two broken people finding solace in each other's arms. She couldn't remember the last time someone held her like this. Not just with passion, but with care. He kissed her forehead, her shoulders, her scars, every part of her that had been neglected, dismissed, or used. She gave herself completely, and not once did he rush or push. He simply held her. Like she was worth holding. And when it was over, and they lay tangled in quiet stillness, the truth sank in slowly, painfully. She had crossed the line. There was no going back. Jessica turned away from him slightly, wrapping the blanket around herself. Her heart was still racing, but not from desire now. From the terrifying weight of reality. Daniel reached over, brushing a finger down her spine. "You okay?" She didn't answer. Not because she didn't know. but because deep down she did. She wasn't okay. But for one night, she had felt alive again. Jessica woke up before the sun. The room was still, wrapped in a gray pre-dawn hush. Daniel lay beside her, arm draped gently across her waist, breathing softly. His chest rose and fell in a rhythm that felt too intimate, too calm, for the storm unraveling in her mind. She stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open. What have I done? The question echoed like thunder. Last night had been something she never imagined herself doing. But when it happened, it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like release. Like something inevitable. But the weight of it now, it pressed on her chest like bricks. She slowly lifted Daniel's arm and slid out of bed. Her clothes lay scattered across the floor, a trail of choices she couldn't take back. She dressed silently, careful not to wake him, every movement wrapped in guilt and confusion. Just as she reached for the door, Daniel stirred. "Jess," he murmured sleepily. She froze. "I didn't mean to wake you," she whispered. His eyes opened slowly, soft and sincere. "You're leaving." "I need to think." Daniel sat up, concern washing over his face. "I'm not asking for anything. I just don't want you to feel like you have to run." Jessica nodded, biting her bottom lip. Her throat tightened. "I know. But I have to face what this means for me. For everything." He didn't stop her. He just looked at her with a sadness she couldn't carry. She stepped outside into the cold morning air, her body trembling, not from the chill, but from the unraveling of who she thought she was. Back home, Tyler was in the kitchen, making coffee like it was just another morning. She entered quietly, heart pounding. Her skin still smelled like Daniel. She couldn't meet Tyler's eyes. He didn't notice. Or maybe, he didn't care. He muttered a casual morning and scrolled through his phone, detached and distant. It was like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't noticed the shift in her, the storm behind her silence. Jessica said nothing. What could she say? She wanted him to ask. She wanted him to feel something. But Tyler simply sipped his coffee, walked out of the room, and closed the bedroom door behind him. She was invisible again. The silence between her and Daniel stretched for days. No texts. No calls. It wasn't out of anger, it was something else. A space. A breath. A question left hanging. Was it a mistake? Was it real? Jessica stood in front of the mirror that night, staring at her reflection like it belonged to a stranger. Her fingers hovered over her phone, aching to message him, but afraid of what it might open up. Then the screen lit up. Daniel, was it a mistake? Her breath caught. She didn't know how to answer. Because the truth was complicated. It felt like everything she wanted and everything she wasn't ready for. Jessica didn't plan to tell Tyler. She wasn't proud of what she'd done, but a part of her had hoped it could stay between her and the silence. A buried moment. A mistake, or maybe not a mistake, just a night that didn't need to exist in anyone else's world. But secrets have a way of slipping through the cracks. She left her phone on the kitchen counter one afternoon, and Tyler picked it up, looking for a charger, or maybe just snooping, as he'd done in the past when his own guilt weighed heavy. And there it was. Daniel's message. Last night felt real. But if you regret it, I'll walk away. Jessica walked in just as Tyler read it. She froze in the doorway, the color draining from her face. His eyes lifted slowly from the screen. Cold. Quiet. Calculating. "What the hell is this?" he asked, voice sharp but steady. She didn't lie. She didn't even try. "I slept with him," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "After everything. I broke too." The room went silent. Not even the refrigerator buzzed. Just Tyler's heavy breathing and the way his jaw clenched with every word she said. "You cheated on me," he growled. "You cheated on me?" "You don't get to act shocked," she snapped suddenly, years of suppressed pain rising to the surface. "You stopped loving me long before I broke. You brought someone else into our bed in your way. The only difference is I finally stopped pretending." Tyler's face flushed red. "You think that justifies it? You think sleeping with someone else makes you any better than me?" Jessica stepped forward. "No, it doesn't. But it makes me honest." And it woke me up to the fact that I deserve more than being a placeholder in my own home. Tyler laughed bitterly. So what now? You run off to him? The guy who swooped in while you were falling apart. I don't know, she said truthfully. This isn't about Daniel. This is about me. I'm done living like I don't matter. He didn't respond. He picked up his keys, stormed out the door, and slammed it so hard the walls shook. Jessica stood there, breathing hard, trembling, but not with fear. With release. The collapse wasn't pretty. It wasn't clean. But it was necessary. Later that evening, she sat on the couch alone. The silence in the house was deeper now, but different. It wasn't the silence of being ignored. It was the silence that follows truth. She picked up her phone, staring at Daniel's message again. Last night felt real. But if you regret it, I'll walk away. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed, then erased. Typed again. Finally, she sent. It wasn't a mistake. But I'm not ready. I need to heal first. And for the first time in years, she chose herself. 3 months later, the apartment felt different. The walls were still the same color. The couch still sagged slightly on the left side. But the energy had changed. Jessica had changed. She sat by the window, legs curled beneath her, sipping from a chipped mug. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't perfect. But it was hers. Since Tyler moved out, she had slowly begun to rebuild. Piece by piece. There were still days when grief knocked the wind out of her. Nights when guilt crept in, whispering cruel things. But more and more, she was learning not to believe every thought that entered her head. She hadn't seen Daniel since the night she told him she needed time. He hadn't pressed. He hadn't chased. But he also hadn't disappeared. Every now and then, he'd send her a message. Hope your week's going okay. Thought of you today. Hope you're breathing easier. Never pushy. Never needy. Just present. It was a quiet kind of love, if it was love at all. One that gave space instead of pressure. That day, her phone buzzed again. Daniel, there's a little art fair in town. Nothing fancy. Thought you might like it. No expectations, just come if you want. She stared at the message, then smiled. The sun was bright over the little booths and pop-up tents. Handmade pottery, local paintings, old records. Jessica walked slowly, breathing in the scent of fresh pretzels and sunscreen. Then she saw him. Daniel stood near a coffee stand, wearing that familiar half-smile, like he wasn't sure if she'd come. She walked toward him, and he straightened, clearly surprised, but happy. Hey, she said softly. Hey, he replied, eyes warm. I wasn't sure you'd. I almost didn't, she admitted. But I wanted to. They walked together, side by side, shoulders brushing, but not quite touching. It was quiet. Simple. Real. She didn't owe him anything. And he didn't expect anything. Eventually, they sat on a bench under a tree, watching kids chase bubbles. I'm still figuring things out, she said, voice steady. Daniel nodded. I know. I don't want to jump into something just because I'm lonely. I wouldn't want you to, he said. You deserve more than that. She looked at him, really looked at him. And in his eyes, she didn't see pressure or impatience. She saw patience. Respect. Maybe even love. But I do want you in my life, she added. A soft smile touched his lips. Then I'll be here. They sat in silence again, not the awkward kind, but the kind that wraps around you like a blanket. Jessica closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't know what the future looked like. Maybe Daniel would be a part of it. Maybe not. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't chasing someone else's love. She was standing in her own. Healing wasn't linear. It wasn't fast. But it was happening. And that was enough. 89.